So, imagine this: my sister dropped her two toddlers at my apartment, says she's running some urgent errands, and then just disappears, like vanished. I'm stuck sick, barely able to move, and suddenly I'm in charge of two tiny humans who don't understand what's happening. And wait, it gets crazier from there. Stick around, because the story goes from messy to completely unbelievable. Oh, and I gotta ask, where in the world are you watching from today? I'd love to know. The pounding on the door was relentless, like someone was trying to break it down, and my head was already splitting from the fever. I groaned, burying my face in the pillow, hoping it was a nightmare. But then I heard it, my name, shouted urgently. It was Amy. My body felt like lead as I dragged myself upright, each movement sending waves of nausea through me. I hadn't moved much in the last 2 days, battling a brutal stomach flu that left me trembling and weak, barely able to keep my eyes open. Clutching my stomach, I wrapped a robe tight around my shivering frame and stumbled down the hall, my legs shaky and untrustworthy, each step a small victory. The door felt impossibly heavy when I reached it, and I braced myself to finally speak, to tell her I couldn't handle this, that I was sick, that I needed her to go. But before I could say anything, she barged in. Amy moved like a hurricane, pushing a double stroller and dragging a massive diaper bag that looked heavy enough to contain bricks. Her heels clicking sharply against the floor. Her hair was perfect, blown out in immaculate waves, makeup flawless, trench coat designer expensive, and there I was, pale, drenched in sweat, smelling like Vicks, utterly unprepared for her storm of energy. She didn't even look at me, just scanned the room, eyes darting like she was checking for threats instead of greeting a sick sister. Bella, my 4-year-old niece, unbuckled herself from the stroller, looking confused, while Leo, 18 months old, wailed from the back seat. Amy, as if rehearsing, lifted Leo and practically thrust him into my arms. The weight of him hit me like a leaden stone. He was heavy, warm, sticky with baby powder and tears, and I could barely manage to hold him without my body threatening to collapse. I swayed against the wall, trying to catch my breath. "What's going on?" I whispered, gripping the couch for support. "Where are you going?" Amy's words came fast, sharp, rehearsed almost. "Errands, administrative nightmare. I have to go downtown, deal with some bank stuff, maybe meet a lawyer about the separation. It's a mess. Molly, Colin is being impossible. Accounts are frozen. I just need 3 hours. 4 tops." Her urgency pressed down on me, a tidal wave of responsibility crashing over my fever-addled mind. Leo grabbed a fistful of my hair, yanking painfully, and I fought to steady myself, willing my stomach to cooperate. "Amy, look at me," I whispered, my voice hoarse and weak. I might vomit at any second. I am not in a state to watch 2 children. Can't you call the nanny or mom? She shook her head, dismissive, glancing at her gold Cartier watch as if it justified everything. "Nanny quit. Mom's in Florida. You're literally the only person I trust with them. Please, Molly, be a sister. I'm drowning here." And there it was, the familiar manipulation behind her eyes, the practiced pull she always knew would get me. Despite the fever, the nausea, and the physical exhaustion, I found myself whispering, defeated. 3 hours. If you're not back by 5, I'm calling the police." She laughed, leaning in to peck me on the cheek, smelling of sandalwood and rose, perfume masking the stress she claimed to be under. I'll be back before you know it. Feed Leo at 3. Bella has her iPad. Love you. And just like that, she was gone. The door clicking shut behind her. I sank against the wall, Leo crying in my arms, Bella staring at me with wide, worried eyes. My fever spiked, sweat soaking my robe, but I had to move, had to survive this, had to get the kids settled. The next hours blurred, getting Leo settled with a bottle, propping myself on the sofa with a bucket nearby, trying to reassure Bella while her tiny brows furrowed with worry. "Auntie Molly, are you dying?" she asked innocently. I shook my head, forcing a calm I didn't feel. "No, sweetie, just very sick. Mommy will be back soon." But she looked at me, eyes wide and certain. "Mommy isn't coming back soon." My blood ran cold. Bella pointed to the suitcase, the big pink one with wheels. "She said errands are for boring people." She put it in the Uber. She said she needs a break. She's going to see the big tower. Paris. My brain went numb. She had lied, planned, and left me with her children while she jet-setted across the Atlantic. Betrayal hit harder than the fever ever could. I sat there, frozen, Leo in my arms, Bella staring at me like she already knew, and slowly, my panic started to crystallize into clarity. Amy hadn't just left me with sick kids. She had planned this. Every word, every gesture, calculated, and in that fevered, nauseated, overwhelmed moment, I realized this wasn't just a request for help. This was manipulation, chaos, and a test of my limits. I was trapped, yes, but I also knew I had no choice but to rise, to take responsibility, and somehow survive the storm she had brought into my apartment. I was still reeling from the chaos Amy had dropped into my apartment when Bella, tiny and solemn, tugged at my sleeve. Her little voice, so calm yet strangely knowing, cut through my fever-addled haze. "Auntie Molly, Mommy said errands are for boring people." My heart skipped. I blinked, trying to process. Errands that didn't fit with the gold Cartier watch, the designer heels, the meticulous hair and makeup, the confident way Amy had pushed past me like a hurricane. My stomach lurched, nausea swirling, my fever blurring the edges of reality. Then, Bella pointed to the suitcase, the big pink one with wheels she'd somehow managed to pack. My throat went dry. "Did Mommy take the suitcase today?" I asked, my voice hoarse. She nodded, matter of fact, her tiny brows knitting together. "She put it in the Uber. She told me not to tell, but she said she needs a break. She said she's going to see the big tower." "The big tower," I echoed, trying to steady my voice. "The one in the movie." She nodded again, returning to her crayons, as if this was just another ordinary fact of life. Paris, the city. My stomach dropped, every muscle in my body protesting. My fever, the nausea, the exhaustion, all of it was nothing compared to this gut punch of betrayal. She had lied. Every word about errands, administrative nightmares, bank visits, lawyer appointments. It was all a script, a careful lie. My hands shook so badly I couldn't pick up my phone without fumbling. I mistyped my passcode twice before finally getting it right and opening Instagram. Nothing. Facebook. Nothing. My mind raced. Maybe it was old news, a throwback post, but then I remembered Amy had a private Snapchat for her close friends. A circle she often forgot I was in because I rarely used the app. I opened it, and there it was, a story posted 40 minutes ago. My heart thudded painfully in my chest as I tapped play. The camera panned lazily around the interior of a first-class cabin. Champagne flute in hand, legs stretched out on plush leather seats. The caption scrolled across the screen. Au revoir, boring life. Paris awaits. Airplane clinking glasses. Self-care. Mommy break. My hands went cold, the phone slipping from my grip onto the couch. She was in the air, already in Paris. I sank onto the sofa, Leo squirming in my arms, Bella staring at me, sensing my tension. I couldn't breathe, not fully, not yet. This wasn't just abandonment, it was premeditated. She had packed her suitcase into an Uber, handed the kids off to me while I was sick, and disappeared across the Atlantic. The betrayal wasn't just a fleeting hurt, it was a knife twisting in my gut. Panic collided with disbelief. My mind was spinning almost as violently as the plane Amy was on, thousands of feet above the ocean. I tried to steady myself, but my fever made everything worse. My stomach churned violently, but there was no vomiting, only a deep, burning nausea that seemed to radiate from the pit of my being. I couldn't process how calculated it all was. The heels, the makeup, the perfume, the constant insistence that she had no other choice. None of it had been necessary. It was manipulation. It was performance, and I had fallen for it. I had always been the responsible one, the fixer, the one who organized everyone else's life. And here I was, straining under the weight of 2 children, my own body betraying me, while she lounged in first class sipping champagne. My hands trembled so hard I had to set Leo down gently onto the couch. My mind a blur of fever and shock. I wanted to scream, to throw the phone across the room, but all I could do was stare at Bella in the suitcase, at the little signs that had been there all along, too obvious in retrospect, the careful packing, the whispered instructions not to tell anyone, the excitement in Bella's voice that she shouldn't have had. It wasn't just deception, it was abandonment dressed up as necessity. I felt every bit of rage mingled with helplessness. My mind kept replaying Amy's words, her laughter, her dismissive gestures, the way she had pushed Leo into my arms, oblivious to the physical and emotional strain I was under. The weight of it all pressed down on me. Nausea churned in tandem with anger. And yet, amidst the whirlwind of betrayal, there was clarity. This wasn't just a simple lie or a rash decision. It was a carefully orchestrated escape, a calculated gamble at my expense and at the expense of her own children. I felt the icy chill of reality seep into my bones. She had thought she could vanish, leaving me to clean up the mess. And somehow, in her mind, it would all be fine. But it wasn't fine. It never would be fine. The realization hit with the force of a freight train. Amy hadn't just run errands. She had abandoned her children, lied to me, and flown to another continent, fully aware of the chaos she was leaving behind. The sheer audacity of it, the coldness, the premeditation, it made me feel physically sick in a way no virus ever could. I sat there, holding Leo, watching Bella as she colored, wide-eyed and confused, the innocence in her face stabbing through me. My stomach churned, my head throbbed, and yet my mind was racing, trying to process a world where someone could treat their own children and their sister with such complete disregard. I thought of the Snapchat video again, the champagne, the plush leather seats, the carefree laughter, and I felt a mix of betrayal, panic, and disbelief swirl inside me like a storm. My body ached, my fever spiked. But my mind had snapped into a state of cold, hard alertness. I needed to act, not yet knowing how, not yet knowing what, but needing to ensure the children were safe, because Amy wasn't coming back for them anytime soon. And this wasn't just a day-long errand gone wrong. This was weeks of absence in disguise. I forced myself to sit upright, gripping Leo as if holding onto reality itself, and tried to think through the chaos. Her lie had been exposed. The suitcase, Bella's words, the social media evidence, it all pointed to one truth. Amy was in Paris, completely unbothered, while I was left with the weight of her deception. Betrayal, panic, shock, exhaustion, all colliding in a way that made my fever, my nausea, even my trembling legs, feel almost secondary to the storm raging in my mind. I couldn't let it win. I couldn't let her abandonment define what came next. And somehow, despite the betrayal and sickness, despite the overwhelming physical and emotional weight of the moment, I knew I had to get control. I had to be the one who held it together. For Leo, for Bella, and for myself. Even if it meant standing when my body screamed to collapse. Because now, the reality wasn't just inconvenient, it was irrevocable. Amy wasn't running errands. She had vanished, and I was the only one standing between her children and the chaos she had willingly created. I sank onto the couch, Leo in my arms, Bella at my side, and tried to force my mind to focus. The fever made everything feel heavy, like I was wading through molasses. But I had to think. First things first, the kids. They were safe for now. But I couldn't let that slip. I ran through their basic needs in my head. Food, hydration, comfort, and keeping them from hurting themselves while my body felt like it might betray me at any moment. My hands shook as I set Leo down gently, propping him with the pillows, and Bella clutched her crayons, eyes wide and observant. I forced a deep breath. Okay, Molly, prioritize, analyze, execute, not tomorrow, now. I needed a plan, however imperfect, however exhausting it would be to implement while my body rebelled. I checked my phone for the umpteenth time. Messages. None that mattered. Instagram and Facebook. Empty feeds. But then I remembered Snapchat. The private one she thought I rarely used. I opened it and scanned through quickly. My fevered brain trying to make sense of the timestamps, the videos, the captions. She was already gone, in the air, thousands of feet above the Atlantic, sipping champagne, leaving 2 children in my care while I could barely stand. My stomach twisted again, but I had to push that feeling aside. I couldn't wallow. I had to act. I pulled myself together, one trembling step at a time, and went to the Find My app we shared. Her little icon moved rapidly across the Atlantic Ocean. This wasn't a mistake. It wasn't old evidence she had left. Confirmed. My head spun, nausea threatening to overtake me, but I forced it down. Focus. The kids first. I mapped out the next few hours in my mind, as if drawing a blueprint. Leo needed a bottle soon. Bella needed reassurance, distraction, and stability. Not panic, not a sobbing aunt, not chaos. The plan had to be precise. I scribbled notes on a scrap of paper, my handwriting shaky but legible. Feed Leo at 3, Bella's iPad for short periods to keep her occupied. Hydrate, pillows arranged for safety, and medications, if necessary. Clean up anything hazardous within reach. It wasn't glamorous, and my body screamed against it, but it was actionable. Then, the next layer. Amy, where exactly was she? Not at the bank, not at the lawyer's office, No. Find My confirmed it, moving fast, over the ocean. I pressed my thumbs against the phone screen, watching the icon zip along the map. Every mile a punch in the gut, but panic wouldn't solve it. I had to keep thinking, what could she do from there? Absolutely nothing in terms of caring for the kids. So the immediate danger was minimal, but the emotional weight, heavy. And I had to manage that too. I went through the motions of checking on Leo, propping him comfortably, making sure Bella had her toys, offering small reassurances, murmuring that mommy would be back soon, even though I knew the truth. I needed them to feel safe, even if I didn't feel it myself. My brain moved to logistics next. Could I contact her? I tried calling, straight to voicemail. FaceTime failed instantly. Not surprising. Then I realized secondary measures, evidence, documentation. Anything that proved this wasn't just a day of errands gone wrong. The Snapchat post, the time-stamped video, Bella's observations, the suitcase. I jotted down everything, trying to keep it organized despite the fever fog. I told myself, Molly, this is not just about outrage. It's about preparation. Rational, logical, methodical. Each observation became a data point, each clue, a piece of the puzzle. The more I documented, the more control I felt returning, the more the panic ebbed into something functional. I moved through the apartment like a surgeon, checking bottles, rearranging pillows, making sure the playpen was secure, making mental notes of everything Leo might reach, everything Bella could get into. Every small act was a declaration I'm still in control, even if my body wants to collapse. I allowed myself a moment to breathe, shaky but steady. My mind ran through contingencies. What if she tried to call again? What if she tried to justify it to others? The evidence had to be airtight. I couldn't let her manipulations gain traction. I visualized what I'd say, how I'd document it, how I'd organize everything so it told a coherent story if I needed it later. The more I plotted, the less my fever mattered. It wasn't gone, but it became background noise. The kids needed a caretaker, and I was going to be that, no matter how weak, no matter how sick, no matter how angry or betrayed I felt. My internal dialogue became a mantra. Prioritize, stabilize, document, act, one step at a time. I adjusted Leo's blanket, checked that Bella was hydrated, reminded her gently to stay on the rug and not touch the drawers. Each small success, each tiny bit of order restored, was a victory. And then, as a storm of nausea and shock swirled inside me, I allowed myself a brief moment of clarity. Amy wasn't coming back for a while, maybe a week. That meant I had to be the anchor, the rational mind, the organizer, the safety net. And I could do it. I forced myself to make a list on my phone, confirm location, document evidence, ensure safety, plan next moves. Every item ticked off in my mind gave me a tiny bit of power back. The panic was still there, simmering beneath the surface, but it was manageable now. Rational thinking had reclaimed a foothold. For the first time since she'd vanished, I could see a path forward, a plan, a way to survive the immediate chaos, protect the children, and prepare for what would inevitably come next. The storm hadn't passed, not by a long shot, but I was ready to navigate it. Fever, nausea, exhaustion, they didn't matter anymore. I had a job to do, and I was going to do it. I sat there on the edge of the sofa, still feverish, still holding Leo, my mind spinning faster than my exhausted body could keep up with. I needed to know exactly what Amy had gotten herself into. Paris wasn't just a spontaneous vacation, it was orchestrated, and I had to find out by whom. I opened a secondary Instagram account I kept for work. The kind we called a burner account, used for checking up on people who tried to hide their lives online. Amy's profile was private, of course, but tags, stories, and posts could be pieced together. I started tracking her activity, scanning every post, every tagged photo, every fleeting detail. It didn't take long before a pattern began to emerge. Amy wasn't alone. She had connections, friends, influences who were clearly feeding her this fantasy. The first was Jessica, a woman Amy had met at a Pilates retreat 3 months ago. Her profile screamed narcissism yachts in Dubai, curated lifestyle photos, captions about manifesting abundance, cutting toxic ties, living your best life. And there she was, in a recent reel. Amy, sitting in the back of a luxury van, laughing a little too hard, her hand resting on the knee of a man I didn't recognize at first. I froze, squinting at the screen, my nausea forgotten for a moment, replaced by a sharp, cold realization. This wasn't a casual meetup. This was grooming. And the man Jean-Luc Dubois, or so he claimed, looked familiar. Not in a friendly way, but the kind of face I had seen in legal documents, in depositions. He was older, silver-haired, Italian-style suit. My pulse quickened as I dug into our legal database. 3 lawsuits in New York. Fraud, breach of contract. He was a grifter, a high-end con artist who preyed on wealthy divorcees or women seeking a lifestyle upgrade. And Amy, exhausted from the constant demands of motherhood, the emotional weight of her own insecurities, was the perfect target. I could feel the nausea creeping back, a mix of disbelief, anger, and the sharp sting of betrayal. Amy wasn't just on vacation. She was being manipulated, groomed, pulled into a world where responsibility was mocked, where her children were anchors, where moral duty was a weakness. I leaned back, letting Leo rest against me, and tried to slow my racing thoughts. I watched the video again, the tight smile on Amy's face, her laugh forced, almost panicked when Jean-Luc whispered something. Jessica appeared on camera, speaking directly, dripping charisma, promising a life of freedom, abundance, and self-empowerment. Amy's body language told the story, her words wouldn't. Desperation, the need to fit in, to be admired, to escape. The realization hit me like a physical blow. This wasn't a simple lie to escape errands. This was a full-on manipulation, a carefully constructed fantasy that Amy was willingly stepping into. Her illusion of control, the shiny veneer of autonomy, was being engineered by people with far more experience in exploiting vulnerabilities than she ever imagined. My mind traced the steps, the breadcrumbs I could see from my end, the meticulous packing, the preemptive instructions to Bella, the luxurious cabin, the champagne. It was all too perfect, too calculated. And yet, Amy believed it was her choice. She believed she was taking control, reclaiming her life. But in reality, she was a pawn in a con game, pulled into a narrative she couldn't control. I felt a mixture of fear and determination. If she thought she could wander off, live a fantasy, and leave destruction in her wake, she hadn't counted on me. I had evidence, timestamps, connections, a digital trail that was undeniable, and I knew exactly how to leverage it when the time came. My internal dialogue was relentless focus. Molly, Don't let the fever or nausea distract you. Track everything, document everything. Every video, every story, every tagged post could be crucial. I scrolled further, pausing on another post from Jessica, a carousel of images from yachts, retreats, and networking events, all captioned with self-empowering mantras. And there, in the back of one of the photos, Amy sat slightly apart, smiling, but her eyes revealed tension. She was trying to fit in, trying to be the main character in a story designed by someone else. Jean-Luc's presence was consistent, always nearby, always central to her newest adventures. My mind clicked. The pattern was clear. This wasn't about a vacation, it was about control, illusion, and money. He needed her to believe in the dream, and she was buying it literally and figuratively. And the worst part, Amy wasn't yet a victim in her own mind. She thought she was making choices, taking a break, reclaiming herself. But the reality was, she had already been groomed into actions that jeopardized her family, her finances, and her reputation. The full scope of it hit me like a hammer. I felt my stomach tighten, not from nausea, but from rage and cold determination. This wasn't just about catching a lie or proving a point. This was about preventing damage, about securing evidence, about understanding the mechanisms of manipulation she had been ensnared in. My fever-addled body still ached, but my mind had sharpened into clarity. I made mental notes, piecing together the relationships, the timeline, the methods Jessica's recruitment, the luxury environment, the constant reinforcement of Amy's worth in ways that dismiss responsibility, Jean-Luc's manipulations, and Amy's unquestioning compliance. Every frame of video, every post, every tag was another piece of proof. And the more I saw, the more I understood just how carefully this had been constructed. I let out a shaky breath, steadying my hands on the phone. Leo had dozed off. Bella sat quietly with her coloring. And for a moment, the apartment felt almost peaceful. But inside, I was plotting, analyzing, cataloging, mentally preparing the strategy. Amy's fantasy world was elaborate, seductive, and dangerous. But it wasn't invincible. I had the evidence, I had the timeline, and I had clarity. She was being pulled into a dream that would cost her dearly. But I was determined she wouldn't get away with leaving destruction in her wake. Every video, every post, every connection was a thread. And I was holding the scissors. I leaned back, letting my fevered mind take stock. Amy wasn't just on vacation. She was being groomed. And I wasn't about to let it cost anyone, least of all her children. My hands were shaking as I dialed Colin's number, heart hammering in my chest. I knew he'd be worried, maybe even scared, and I needed him calm enough to listen, but urgent enough to act. The line clicked, and a tired, wary voice answered. "Molly," he asked. I swallowed hard, trying to steady my own voice. "Colin, listen to me carefully. The kids are safe, but Amy isn't. She's in Paris, and she left them with me. I need you to hear this and not hang up." There was a pause, then a sharp intake of breath. "She told me if I tried to see them, she'd file a restraining order," he whispered, his voice cracking. My chest tightened. He hadn't seen Bella in months, had no idea what Leo looked like, and now he was learning the truth all at once. I focused, taking a deep breath. "Okay, first, don't panic. The kids are fine for now. Second, we're going to organize everything. I have evidence timestamps, videos, social media. her instructions to Bella, financial records. We're going to document everything. You need to come here. We'll go through it step by step, and we're going to make sure the court sees the full picture. He hesitated, then agreed. By the time he arrived, the apartment was quiet. A tense calm. Leo was asleep in the playpen. Bella curled on the couch with her favorite stuffed bunny. I had my laptop open, documents and screenshots arranged, notes scribbled on scraps of paper around me. The second he walked in, I could see the weight of the last months etched in his posture, in the slump of his shoulders, in the anxious dart of his eyes scanning the room. "Colin, they're okay," I said softly, motioning toward the kids. His gaze softened, but the worry didn't fade. He moved slowly toward the couch, kneeling beside Bella, gently placing a hand on her hair. I could hear the catch in his breath, the mix of relief and guilt. He hadn't been there. He hadn't been able to protect them, and now he could, finally. But the stakes were higher than ever. I pulled out the binder I'd been compiling, and we began. I explained the timeline, starting from the moment Amy had dropped the kids off while I was sick, through Bella's comments, the suitcase, the Snapchat evidence, the flight tracker confirming Amy's location. Colin listened, absorbing each detail, nodding, occasionally muttering under his breath. I could see his mind racing, trying to process, trying to figure out what steps we could take immediately. We moved systematically, inventorying every piece of evidence, screenshots of social media, timestamps, messages, even the diaper bag and its contents. I pointed out what each item proved, why it mattered. The financial records were especially devastating. The joint savings, now wired to a mysterious account tied to Jean-Luc Dubois, $40,000 gone in a heartbeat, and proof that Amy had acted recklessly. Colin's face went pale. "She gave him our savings?" he asked, voice low, incredulous. I nodded, letting him absorb the gravity. Then I broke down the legal implications. Custody orders weren't just pieces of paper they were binding. Based on parental presence and responsibility, Amy abandoning the children while fleeing the country was more than negligence. It was actionable. I showed him the evidence that would make a judge take immediate notice. "Colin, this isn't just a confrontation or a family argument. This is legal, concrete. If we present this correctly, we can secure custody and protect the kids immediately. But we have to move fast. Document, organize, strategize. Every detail matters." He ran his hands through his hair, fatigue and worry etched on his face. "Okay," he said finally. "I trust you. What do we do first?" I handed him the first batch of screenshots, notes, and timestamps. We worked together, side by side, organizing the files in a logical order, highlighting the evidence of abandonment, the financial mismanagement, and the premeditated nature of Amy's departure. Every click, every annotation, every note was deliberate, careful. I explained the reasoning behind each piece of evidence, showing how it would fit into an emergency motion for temporary custody. The urgency was palpable. Time was against us. Amy could return, manipulate, or complicate things further if we hesitated. Our teamwork fell into a rhythm, combining my legal knowledge with his familiarity with their family's financial and personal history. We double-checked flight records, confirmed social media posts, and cross-referenced every detail with the children's statements and observations. The room was quiet except for the occasional whispered exchange, the click of keys, the soft coo of Leo in the playpen. Every once in a while, I'd glance at Colin, seeing the raw emotional weight on him. This wasn't abstract anymore. It was his children, his life, his chance to step in and finally protect them. And the stakes couldn't be higher. We worked for hours, sometimes sitting back to catch our breath, sometimes leaning in over the laptop, poring over details, connecting dots, and planning next moves. Each revelation, each document we verified, strengthened our strategy and our resolve. The emotional weight was almost tangible, pressing down on us, but it sharpened our focus. We were a team, exhausted, yes, fevered, yes, but united in purpose. By the end of the night, we had a clear, actionable plan evidence compiled, affidavit drafted, emergency court motion ready. We were prepared. Amy had left chaos in her wake, but we were ready to respond decisively, to protect the kids, and to hold her accountable. As Colin finally leaned back, exhausted but resolute, I allowed myself a brief moment to breathe. The night had been long, tense, and fraught with emotion, but we had clarity, strategy, and most importantly, the children were safe. The apartment felt like a war zone, papers strewn across every surface, laptops glowing, phones buzzing, and me hovering in the middle of it all, fever still simmering, nausea clinging like a shadow. Leo was finally asleep in the playpen, propped up on pillows, and Bella sat quietly on the rug, crayons scattered, wide-eyed and watching, sensing the tension in the air. My body screamed for rest, but my mind wouldn't allow it. This wasn't just babysitting anymore. It was triage, strategy, and battle all at once. I grabbed the diaper bag first, the most immediate piece of evidence, heavy, cumbersome, its contents seemingly innocent at a glance. But every detail told a story. 3 diapers for 2 children, 2 small pouches of puree, no formula, no change of clothes for Leo for the next several hours. Nothing to suggest Amy had considered actual caregiving, only appearances. I set it carefully on the coffee table, like a detective examining a crucial clue, and started documenting it, typing every item into a spreadsheet. Each omission, each overlooked necessity became another data point in the case against her. My hands shook, fever making each movement deliberate and slow, but I forced focus. The kids were safe for now, and I couldn't let myself be derailed by exhaustion or sickness. Colin arrived a short while later, his face pale, the stress and sleep deprivation written clearly across his features. He hadn't seen the kids in months, and now he was confronting the full extent of Amy's betrayal. I guided him through the apartment, pointing out Leo asleep in the playpen, Bella still quietly coloring on the rug, and explained the immediate situation. Amy was gone, in Paris, and had left her children in my care. He knelt beside Bella, hand trembling as it rested lightly on her hair, relief and guilt mingling in his expression. The emotional weight of this moment didn't escape me. This wasn't just documentation. This was the safety and future of 2 children, and Colin's chance to finally intervene. We moved systematically, starting with the financial records. Colin logged into the joint account that Amy technically wasn't supposed to touch, and his face drained of color as he read the balance. $40,000 vanished. Wire transfer to an account linked to a Global Ventures LLC in Lyon, a name tied to someone called Jean-Luc Dubois. My fingers flew across the keyboard as I captured screenshots of every transaction, making sure timestamps, account numbers, and details were clear and undeniable. This wasn't just about proving negligence, it was about demonstrating deliberate, reckless decisions with the children's future at stake. Next, we turned to the flight trackers. Amy's icon was moving steadily across the Atlantic, confirming what Bella had already hinted at and what the Snapchat post had revealed. She was gone, thousands of feet above the ocean, unreachable, untouchable. I refreshed the tracker obsessively, making mental notes, cross-referencing with the Snapchat timestamp, piecing together a timeline that left no room for dispute. Each observation reinforced the narrative of premeditated abandonment. Then came the social media posts, Instagram, Snapchat, even lesser-used profiles. Each video, each story, each caption became evidence. Champagne in hand, legs stretched in first-class leather seats, her smile tight and practiced, her laugh slightly too loud when Jean-Luc whispered something. I documented each frame, each moment, embedding them into a chronology that would support our affidavit. Every detail mattered: the timing, the captions, the interactions, the visuals of luxury that contrasted so sharply with the chaos she left behind. We worked silently for hours, punctuated only by the occasional whispers. Colin verified financial discrepancies, or I cross-checked timestamps. The apartment smelled faintly of coffee and antiseptic wipes, the air thick with exhaustion and tension. My fever pressed on me relentlessly, but I ignored it. There was no room for weakness, no room for distraction. Every screenshot, every flight confirmation, every note had to be precise. Judges, especially in emergency ex parte hearings, didn't respond to emotion. They responded to clarity, evidence, and precision. I forced my brain into hyper-focus, documenting everything: the diaper bag, the missing essentials, the financial trail, the timestamp social media proof, the kids' own statements and observations, even the subtle clues from Bella that had initially tipped me off. Drafting the affidavits was next, a furious sprint of words and documentation. I typed chronologically, detailing Amy's arrival, her dismissive behavior, the weight of Leo in my arms, Bella's observations, the suitcase, the Snapchat posts, the flight tracker data, and the financial records. Colin assisted where he could, providing context about routines, explaining the significance of certain dates, and filling in gaps that only a parent could accurately detail. We annotated each screenshot, cross-referenced everything, and built a narrative that was airtight, leaving no room for Amy to claim spontaneity or accident. This was deliberate, calculated, and verifiable. Hours blurred into one another. Fever, nausea, trembling legs, it all faded into background noise as the process became rhythmic, almost meditative in its precision. Every click, every typed sentence, every annotation brought clarity. By fora, we had a 30-page affidavit, comprehensive and detailed, including everything from the diaper bag inventory to the financial misconduct, the flight tracker, and social media evidence. It was a document designed to make a judge take immediate action. The weight of it hung in the room like an invisible force, tangible, pressing, but also oddly empowering. For the first time, I felt control returning. Despite the betrayal, the sickness, and the chaos, I had structured undeniable proof that we could act on immediately. The final step was securing the emergency court order. I emailed the affidavit to Richard Henderson, the senior partner at my firm, a man known for his ruthlessness in court. He replied almost instantly, recognizing the urgency and precision of our work. He agreed to meet at the courthouse at 8:30 a.m. for an emergency ex parte hearing. We reviewed the documents one final time, verifying every timestamp, every screenshot, every financial record. The process was frantic but systematic, a balance of urgency and meticulous detail. Every piece had to be indisputable. Amy's fantasy, her carefully curated escape, couldn't outmaneuver precise documentation. By the first light of dawn, exhaustion was overwhelming, but so was a sense of triumph. The children were safe, the evidence meticulously compiled, and the legal path clear. We had transformed chaos into a strategy, panic into action, Amy's disappearance, her lies, her abandonment. All of it had been turned into a narrative that would be undeniable in court. The combination of social media, flight data, financial records, and first-hand observations created a mosaic of proof, so complete it would be impossible for a judge to ignore. Sitting back, finally, I let myself breathe for a moment, feeling the magnitude of what we had accomplished. We had survived the night, organized the evidence, and prepared a plan that could secure immediate custody and protect the children. Every screenshot, every detail, every annotation, every observation had been captured. We were ready. Amy's carefully constructed fantasy had met its match in relentless documentation, critical thinking, and sheer determination. I looked at Colin, exhausted, pale, but resolute, and saw the relief in his eyes. The kids were safe, the legal groundwork was solid, and the storm was about to meet structure. For the first time, despite the lingering fever and nausea, I felt a flicker of triumph. We were ready to act. The children's future, finally, could be secured. The moment the court order went through, I knew the real chaos was about to begin, but I wasn't prepared for the kind of unraveling Amy would go through in the following hours. It started with her texts, one after another, frantic, demanding, pleading, each more unhinged than the last. "My card got declined," she typed. "They're threatening to call the hotel police. Fix this now. Molly, I'm your sister. How can you be so cruel?" I read them, sipping lukewarm tea, forcing myself to stay calm. Each ping of her phone was like a drumbeat of hysteria, but I didn't respond immediately. The point wasn't to argue or soothe. It was to observe, document, and collect proof. I knew that the more desperate she became, the more evidence she would provide herself. Within minutes, her social media accounts transformed. Her previously curated travelogue became a frantic smear campaign. Videos of herself crying in hotel rooms, the camera shaky, the voice trembling, claiming that I had kidnapped the children, that Colin had brainwashed me, that she was the victim of everyone's jealousy and cruelty. She tagged men's rights groups, toxic family forums, anyone she thought might rally to her side, weaponizing the internet against us. Her posts were chaotic, disjointed, and emotionally raw, a stark contrast to the meticulously polished images she had posted before. I leaned back, letting her desperation paint the full picture. Each post, each tag, each exaggerated claim of victimhood became a piece of the evidence we could use in court. It was like watching a slow motion unraveling, the threads of her control snapping one by one. While Amy spiraled online, the real shock came from her financial panic. The joint savings account she had drained to fund her flight and the con artist's schemes had already hit rock bottom. She sent me a string of texts, each more frantic than the last. "Amy, my money's gone. I can't pay for food. They're threatening to call the hotel. Jean-Luc said I'd be fine. What do I do, Molly? You have to fix this." I read them calmly, not letting the fever or exhaustion disrupt my focus. She had been played, manipulated, and now she was realizing it piece by piece. And I was documenting it all meticulously. Each frantic message confirmed the patterns I had already traced. She was the mark, and the con artist had moved on, leaving her exposed and vulnerable. The phone buzzed again. 3 a.m. Her voice screamed so loud I had to hold the phone away from my ear. "He's gone, Molly. He's gone. Jean-Luc left me." The panic in her voice was palpable, desperate, almost childlike. I closed my eyes for a moment, letting the emotional weight settle. But I didn't waver. This was exactly the evidence we needed. Proof of grooming, abandonment, and manipulation. I took a slow, deliberate breath and asked, "Who is gone?" My voice steady, calm, in stark contrast to the chaos on the other end. She sobbed, hiccuping, trying to make sense of the disappearance, realizing that the fantasy she had been sold was collapsing entirely. "He took everything. Molly, my laptop, my jewelry, the hotel room. He left a note tuition fee," she cried. I listened carefully, letting her unravel while documenting every word. The note, the voice memos, the timing. Everything fit into the narrative of a calculated con. I repeated calmly, "Amy, you've been played. You are alone in Paris, with no money, no passport, and pending criminal liability for leaving your children." Her sobs intensified, but I didn't intervene emotionally. Not yet. She had given me exactly what I needed: evidence of the scam, her manipulation of reality, and the collapse of her carefully curated story. Every panicked social media post, every pleading text, every cry over lost funds was another piece of proof, a puzzle forming an undeniable pattern. She whispered finally, between gasps, "Please, Molly, I'm scared. I want to come home. I want my kids." I felt the weight of her vulnerability, but I stayed firm. "You can come home," I said evenly, my voice hard but not cruel. "I will arrange a flight using my miles, but you need to understand something. You are not coming home to your children yet. You are coming home to a court hearing. Colin has custody. You will have to answer for everything you did." The silence on the other end was a testament to her understanding of the situation. The fantasy was gone, replaced by legal reality, and she had no shield left. For the first time, she was facing consequences, and I was in control. While she processed this, I continued documenting. Each frantic text was saved, time-stamped, screenshotted. Each social media post, each accusation, each panicked claim became part of a growing evidence dossier. She couldn't control the narrative anymore. Every desperate action was feeding into the proof. I watched the patterns, noting the escalation, the targeting of groups online, the increasing randomness of her posts. It was chaotic but methodical, and I methodically pieced it together like a detective. The more desperate she became, the more she revealed herself. By the early morning, her messages had slowed slightly. exhaustion starting to creep in as the shock of being abandoned by the con artist settled. She sent one final text, almost incoherent. "He's gone. Molly, I'm alone. I don't know what to do." I saved it immediately, marking the timestamp. That single line encapsulated the entire collapse: the grooming, the manipulation, the abandonment, the realization of the scam. I had everything I needed to show the court that Amy had been manipulated, had acted recklessly, and had abandoned her responsibilities. Despite the swirling chaos of social media, financial panic, and her endless texts, I maintained control. My hands moved over the keyboard, organizing screenshots, annotating messages, embedding flight tracker screenshots, and cataloging every detail of the diaper bag and its contents. Each element became a bullet point in the narrative, a factual, verifiable piece of the story that couldn't be disputed. The frantic energy on Amy's end contrasted sharply with my calm, deliberate documentation. Her panic was evidence. Her desperate attempts to manipulate or plead became proof of her miscalculations. Her vulnerability to con artists and her disregard for the children she had left behind. I took stock periodically, checking on Leo and Bella. Leo remained asleep, oblivious to the chaos, and Bella occasionally peeked up, sensing something was happening, but too tired and trusting to fully understand. The juxtaposition of their innocence and Amy's unraveling panic made my focus even sharper. Everything I captured, every detail I noted, became part of the arsenal that would protect the children, hold Amy accountable, and show the court exactly what had happened. Hours passed. The sun began to rise, but Amy's panic hadn't dissipated. Her posts continued sporadically, messages occasionally pinging, and the signs of abandonment and loss were clear. Jean-Luc was gone, her money gone, her sense of control gone, and yet she continued to act, providing more proof with each interaction. I collected it all, organized it, and prepared to consolidate the evidence into a comprehensive narrative. Every screenshot, every timestamp, every desperate plea became a brick in a wall of undeniable truth. The court would see not only the abandonment and recklessness, but also the manipulation she had suffered, the scam she had funded, and the way she had endangered her children by prioritizing a fantasy over their safety. By the time I finally paused, exhaustion was absolute, my body trembling, my fever raging, but my work was done. The evidence was compiled, annotated, and ready. Amy's panic, her financial loss, her social media meltdown, and the abandonment by Jean-Luc had created a perfect storm of proof. Every frantic action she had taken fed directly into the case we would present. Despite the emotional intensity, despite the physical exhaustion, I felt a controlled triumph. The narrative was complete. The evidence was airtight. Amy had spiraled, but I had remained focused, methodical, and unshakable, capturing everything that would secure the children's safety and ensure accountability for the chaos she had caused. The moment Amy stepped through the door after landing, the air in our childhood living room shifted. Usually, the space smelled of cinnamon and comfort, but today it was thick with tension, like static before a storm. She sat on the sofa, shoulders hunched, hair pulled back in a messy bun, no makeup, looking like she had spent hours trying to evoke sympathy. Colin and I walked in together, the kids safely in his arms, and I could feel every heartbeat in the room. Amy's eyes widened, a mix of fear and disbelief as she registered our presence, Her first words were a shaky plea, almost theatrical. "Mom, tell them to give me my babies back. I made a mistake. Okay, I went on a trip. People go on trips. That doesn't mean you steal their children." My mother's eyes were wide, worried, pleading for compromise, but I could feel the weight of truth pressing against every word Amy had said over the last weeks. I took a deep breath, letting calm settle over me, though inside, adrenaline was still surging. "Mom," I said, voice steady, cutting through the theatrics. "She's not destitute. She's been reckless. This isn't about mistakes. This is about the children and evidence we have of deliberate abandonment." I walked to the coffee table and placed the thick black binder down with a deliberate thud. The sound echoed in the room, and Amy flinched slightly, her eyes darting to it. I opened it carefully, laying out the pieces one by one. Photos of Amy in first-class seats with champagne, time-stamped texts instructing Bella to hide her trip, flight tracker screenshots, the diaper bag contents, and the bank records showing the $40,000 wire transfer. Her breathing hitched as the evidence spoke louder than any words could. "This isn't negotiation," I continued, voice calm but firm. "This is proof. Proof of abandonment, proof of reckless financial decisions, and proof that the children's welfare was disregarded." Amy's face went pale, eyes darting between the binder, me, Colin, and our parents. "You said you went for a mental health retreat. You said you were in a clinic," my mother murmured softly. Amy's gaze flickered, panic rising. That was juicotherapy exercise," she stammered. I shook my head, my voice firm. "And this," I said, pushing the bank records toward her, "is $40,000 from your joint savings. The money meant for the children's tuition and a house down payment. Wire transfer to Global Ventures, LLC, the day you left. Not a retreat, not a clinic. A deliberate abandonment of responsibility." She sank back into the sofa, her face draining of color, her body trembling as the magnitude of the evidence hit her. Colin stood silently, a sentinel beside me, his hand brushing Bella's hair as she peeked over his arm. For the first time, Amy's carefully cultivated victim persona faltered. Her voice, once so full of entitlement, cracked. I was doing it for us. John Luke said it would triple. I was going to buy us a mansion." She tried to justify, to reclaim her narrative, but the evidence was unassailable. I leaned in, keeping my voice even, almost surgical. "You gave it to a con man because you wanted to be rich without working. The children's safety and finances were irrelevant to you." The room fell silent, the weight of reality pressing down. Amy's eyes darted to my parents, searching for support, but they looked down, uncomfortable, their hands clasped tightly, unable to intervene. She was alone, stripped of excuses and allies. I connected my phone to the speaker, playing a voicemail left by Jan Luke, the con artist, to another victim. His smooth, arrogant voice filled the room, mocking and dismissive. "Consider the money a small price for the lesson. You were never a partner. Heavy baggage. Go back to your little life." Amy's sobs filled the air. Genuine for the first time, stripped of performance. And I could see the weight of realization crashing down on her. The humiliation, the panic, the consequences she had long avoided, they were all converging in that room. My father's voice, low and steady, finally broke through. You empty the savings account for him, he whispered, as if stating the obvious. She buried her face in her hands, realizing her choices had consequences beyond her imagination. Colin, for the first time, spoke with a quiet, raw intensity. I sent you checks every week. Molly practically raised Bella for you. Our parents paid your rent. You don't hate being a mom. Amy, you hate not being the center of the universe. His voice shook with suppressed rage. The emotional weight of months of alienation and lies finally finding release. Amy's mask of victimhood cracked. Her entitlement, her manipulations, they were all laid bare. She lunged, scrambling to grab the car keys from the table, yelling about taking the kids. But I stood firm. I wasn't just her little sister anymore. I caught her wrist midair, enough to show I was in control without causing harm. "Sit down, Amy," I commanded, my voice sharp, unwavering. Her disbelief, panic, and the sudden realization of her vulnerability rendered her motionless. She looked to my parents for support, but their silence was deafening. She was alone, cornered, stripped of her performance, facing the legal reality she had tried to avoid. The final custody hearing was equally tense, but grounded in the evidence we had meticulously collected. The courtroom was cold, echoing, but the binder I had prepared spoke volumes before a word was said. Amy sat at the defense table, slumped, pale, and small. Colin, beside me, looked composed yet intensely aware of the stakes. The judge, a stern woman with zero tolerance for parental negligence, examined each piece of evidence the social media posts, the flight tracker, the texts, the bank records, the diaper bag. I watched as the pieces of the narrative unfolded methodically, and every detail pointed to the same undeniable truth. Amy's actions were deliberate, reckless, and damaging to the children. "Miss Miller," the judge addressed Amy, voice sharp, cutting through the courtroom's hum. "In 20 years on the bench, I have rarely seen such profound selfishness. You didn't just leave your children. You liquidated their future to fund a fantasy. You prioritized your ego over their survival." Amy didn't look up. She nodded, defeated, finally absorbing the weight of accountability. The gavel came down. Sole legal and physical custody was awarded to Colin, effective immediately. The mother was granted supervised visitation, 2 hours every Saturday at a court-approved center, with child support garnished directly from wages. Regarding the $40,000, the judgment was entered in favor of Colin. With repayment required, justice, at last, had been served, and the relief in the room was palpable. Walking out of the courthouse, the air felt crisp, almost healing, like stepping out after a long, feverish illness. Colin stopped on the steps, looking at me, exhausted but lightened by the resolution. "Thank you," he said, voice thick with gratitude. "I don't know how else to say it. You saved us. You gave me my life back." I smiled softly, adjusting my bag. "You saved yourself, Colin. I just handled the paperwork." We returned to the apartment to pick up the kids from my parents, who had been watching them. Bella was on the swings, her laughter ringing clear and bright through the park, and Leo toddled through the leaves, chasing a squirrel, pure, innocent joy in motion. When Bella saw Colin, she didn't just walk, she ran, threw her arms around him, and he lifted her, burying his face in her neck. Their laughter, unfiltered and genuine, was the best kind of closure. The kind that can't be faked or staged. It was proof that justice had real, tangible effects. I watched them, my heart swelling, knowing that the long, chaotic journey of evidence gathering, legal preparation, and family confrontation had culminated in this moment. The children were safe, the truth had prevailed, and the spiral of betrayal had been halted. Relief, justice, and emotional closure filled the space, not just for the kids, but for Colin and me. We'd endured, we'd documented, and finally, we had restored balance. The fight had been grueling, exhausting, and emotionally draining, but seeing the children's laughter, seeing the weight lifted from Colin's shoulders, made every late night, every fevered hour, and every painstaking documentation session worth it. We had won the day, reclaimed what was theirs, and in that moment, justice felt not only real, but profoundly human. In the end, the kids were safe. Justice was served, and a sense of relief finally settled over all of us. Watching Colin and the children reunited, laughing and carefree, reminded me that family and truth really do matter above everything else. It was chaotic, exhausting, and emotional, but worth every moment to protect them. If this story resonated with you, stick around for more real-life drama like this, and maybe consider giving a like or subscribing so you don't miss what happens next.